Welcome to Time Off. In this video, we will show you the features of Time Off as well as how to set up your account. Specifically, we will look at the calendar and go through the account setup checklist. This includes how to create time off types, time off policies, length of services, and go through some of the account settings. As a bonus, at the end, we will explain the user settings and go through an explanation of some of our reports. If you want to skip to a certain section, you can click on the time codes in the description below. When you log into your time off account for the first time, you will see the account setup checklist. This is the recommended way to set up your time off account, and we will be going over every point on the list during this video. If you want to remove the account setup checklist notification from the calendar screen, click on the Hide button and then select Hide Temporarily or Hide Permanently. Before we go through the account setup checklist, let's look at the calendar view. The calendar is where you will be able to view both pending and approved time off requests. Every rectangle on the calendar represents a request. If a request occupies a single day on the calendar, then it is a full day request. If it spans across multiple days, then it is a multi-day request. If the rectangle is transparent, then it is a partial day request, meaning that the user has only taken part of the day off. When a request has a question mark on it, this means it is a pending request. The manager has not yet changed its status. One way to approve a pending request would be to select the request from the calendar and click on one of the action buttons at the bottom. If it is approved, the user who entered the request will be notified. To edit or cancel a request, select an already approved request from the calendar and click the respective button at the bottom of the screen. If you want to cancel a single day in a multi-day request, select the request from the calendar, select the day you want to cancel from the drop-down menu at the top, then click the Cancel button at the bottom of the request. At the right side of your screen is a list of all pending requests. They are listed here so that you don't have to scroll through the calendar to find every pending request. The process is the same. Click on a pending request and change the status of the request at the bottom. Now let's move on to the account setup checklist. We'll start by looking at time off types. You can get to your time off types by clicking on Settings at the left side of your screen in the navigation menu and click on Time Off Types. There are two kinds of time off types that you can create. There are deductible and non-deductible time off types. Deductible time off types are the kinds of time off your employees can take that will have a balance of time associated with it. Some examples of deductible time off types would be vacation, sick, or personal, or PTO. Non-deductible time off types do not have a balance of time associated with it and are used for tracking. Some examples would be work from home, unpaid time off, and travel. Click on Add New to create a new time off type. In this case, we're going to create a new one called Sick. Below the name, you can choose a color that requests of this type will show up as on the calendar. The Deduct Hours from Bank switch determines if this is a deductible or a non-deductible time off type. The Deduct From option allows this time off type to deduct from another time off type. In this case, we can select sick time to come out of vacation time. If you leave it on itself, then this time off type will have its own balance of time. Allow Request Types will allow this time off type to be used in full and partial day requests, only full day requests, or only partial day requests. If this time off type is allowed to be used in partial day requests, you can select the increments of time that can be taken. Under Comment box, you can select if a comment on the time off request for this type is optional, required, or not available. The same goes for file uploads. You can choose if a file can be uploaded to a request for this type. Once you're finished, click the Create button and it will bring you back to the Time Off Types screen. Finish creating the rest of your time off types, and you'll be ready to move on to the second item in the account setup checklist, time off policies. To begin creating your time off policies, go to the settings menu at the left side of your screen and click on Time Off Policies. One of the most common ways to set up your policies is based upon length of service. In this example, the vacation allowance on the 1-year policy is 5 days. The vacation allowance on the 2 years policy is 8 days. And then the vacation allowance on the 5 years policy is 10 days. Let's create a new policy called 10 years, which a user would receive at 10 years of service. We'll add 5 sick days and 15 vacation days to this policy. Start by clicking Add New at the top right. Now give your policy a name, then click Continue. Next, we have to add time off types to the policy. Do so by clicking on Add Time Off Type to Policy. Choose the time off type in the drop-down menu at the top. Then select when the policy will renew. Typically, this would be at the beginning of the calendar year or on the employee's anniversary. If you want the policy to renew on their anniversary, leave this field blank. There is one other step we need to take to ensure it will renew on their anniversary, but we will look at that at the end of this video. Next is the yearly allowance. This is the amount of time, in days or hours, an employee is allowed to have in a year. Following the yearly allowance is the default balance. If an employee doesn't currently have a policy on their account, this will be the balance they will receive once the policy is applied. If default balance is set to full, then the employees will receive their full allowance right away. In this case, they'll get the full 5 days in their balance. If it's set to empty, they won't receive anything in their balance. If you have set up a prorated balance, you'll be able to select it from here. Upon renewal is the action that will take place when the policy renews. Some of the commonly used options are reset the full allowance, which means that any unused time is removed and the user is given a full allowance. Reset to empty allowance, which means any unused time is removed and no time is added to the balance. Carry over all means that all unused time is carried over to the next year. Carry over all plus full allowance means that all unused time is carried over to the next year, plus they receive the full allowance in their balance. Carry over limit means they can only carry over a specified amount of time. And carry over limit plus full allowance means they can carry over a specified amount of time and receive the full allowance in their balance. If your employees accrue time, you are able to configure this by first setting the accrual interval. Time can be accrued daily, weekly, every X month, semi-monthly, or every 2 weeks. For this example, we will select every X month. We will also choose to have time accrued every month on the first day of the month. Now enter the amount of time your employees accrue. This can be entered in hours, days, or a percentage of the allowance. Next, select when the policy will accrue until. We're going to look at 3 of the most commonly used options. Balance is full means the accrual will continue as long as there's room in their balance. Using the example of 15 days, if 10 days are carried over from the previous year, then 5 days will be accrued. If they use any of those days, the accrual will start again. Max balance of allows you to set a balance at which the policy will stop accruing.
If the max balance has been reached and the employee uses some of that time, it will continue to accrue again.
Until allowance is full means the accrual will continue until the number that is set in the allowance is reached in the balance. In this case, 15 days will be accrued. If there is a carryover of 10 days, then the full 15 days will still accrue, making their total for that year 25. Next are restrictions. Restrictions determine how the employee can take time off. Balance required means they have to have the time in their balance in order to take time off. Allowed pre-book means they can book time off at any point in the year as long as they're going to accrue it in the future. Allow overbook allows users to take off as much time as they like. Accrued by date means they can request time off as long as they would have accrued the time by the date of the request. Allow pre-book and accrued by date are only used when an accrual is set on the policy. Once you've finished adding a time off type to the policy, click Add and you'll be brought back to the time off policy settings. If you have any other deductible time off types to add to the policy, you can add them at this point. Remember, you can have multiple time off types in one policy. Once you've finished creating your policies, go back to the time off policy list to apply the policy to your users. Click the Apply Policy button to select the users the policy applies to, then click the Apply Policy button at the bottom. We mentioned earlier that if you want a policy to renew on the anniversary date, there is one more setting to change. This setting is found in Account Settings under the General tab and is called User Calendar Year Setting. Turn on the Match Calendar Year to Hire Date switch so that the policy will renew on the user's anniversary. Now that you've created your policies, let's go through the third point on the account setup checklist, length of services. A length of service accrual is what allows your employees to switch automatically from policy to policy, effectively giving them more time the longer they stay with your company. It's like a map that you create that tells the system when to move a user on to the next policy. Let's begin by going to Settings and clicking on Length of Services. There are two kinds available: allowance increase and policy change. Since we created multiple policies, we're going to use policy change, which is the most commonly used option. Start by clicking Add New and give the length of service a name. You can choose if administrators, managers, or employees are notified when a length of service change happens. Once you're done, click Continue. On this next screen, you'll be able to add your policies to the length of service. It should be noted that any policy they get on their date of hire should not be added to the length of service. That policy is added to their account manually when you create it. Click on Add Policy to apply to add your first policy to the length of service. Select the first policy from the drop-down menu, in this case the 1-year policy. Next, set at how many months of service they will receive this policy. In this example, we want them to get the 1-year policy at 12 months of service. Now choose when the policy is given. If you select Anniversary, then the policy will be given on their anniversary. If you select Calendar Year Renewal, then the policy will be given at the beginning of the calendar year. In this example, it will be given to the user on January 1st of the year that they will hit 12 months. Once you've finished, click Add. Now add the rest of your policies to the length of service accrual. Once you've finished adding the policies, you can then assign the length of service to your users. Go back to the length of service screen and click on the Assign button next to your newly created length of service accrual. Select the users who should have this length of service and click Apply at the bottom. Finally, Let's look at the last item on the account setup checklist, account settings. We are going to go through a few of the most commonly used settings. Be sure to go through each setting for yourself so that your account will be properly configured. Account settings is found in the navigation menu at the left side of your screen. Let's start by looking at the General tab. Here you can find settings such as the account language, setting the month your calendar year starts, matching the user's calendar year to their hire date, which allows their time off policy to renew on their anniversary, setting how many hours are in a full day, choosing how balances and allowances are displayed, either in hours, days, or mixed, and setting your date format. Under Calendar, you can choose if the colors on your calendar are from the time off types or are the department colors, and you can set restrictions on who managers and employees can see in their calendar. Under Time Off Request, you can change how time off requests are made with options like choosing if partial day requests can be submitted for any time frame, only half days, or to disallow partial day requests, and choosing to allow past day requests and future year requests. When choosing the future year request option, you can select if they are not allowed and decide which calendar years to take the time from, force users to deduct from the current calendar year, or force users to deduct from the next calendar year. Under Reports, you can change which columns appear in the Time Off Summary Report and who can see them. Finally, under Banked Time, you can enable bank time for your account and choose which time off type approved time is transferred into by default. User Settings allows you to make modifications to an individual's time off information. You can get to the user settings by clicking on Manage Users at the left-hand side of your screen, then go to User List, then click on the User Settings button next to the user in question. First, let's look at the Allowance tab. From here, you can see which time off types have been added to the user, the yearly allowance for each type, what will happen when the renewal date comes up, the renewal date, if requests of this type auto-approve, the restriction on how this user is able to use the time from this type, and the name of the policy that is applied. Note that all the information on this screen is populated by the time off policy that has been applied to them. If you would like to edit any of these settings for this individual, click on the Edit button to the right of the time off type, and you'll be able to make any changes you wish. These changes will only affect this user and will not make changes to the policy you created earlier. Keep in mind, any changes you make here will not affect the balance or balance accrual. If you need to make changes to a user's balance, click on the Balance tab. Click on the Edit button next to the balance you wish to change. From here, you can add or subtract hours or days from their balance. While it's not required, it is highly recommended that you add a note stating why you are making the change. This note will appear in the audit trail and will be helpful to sort out any mix-ups. Approval Path allows you to choose how requests are approved. Any manager means any one of the approving managers can approve the request. X out of Y means you can set a certain number out of all the approving managers to approve the request. For example, 2 out of 3. Specific sequence means that the request will have to be approved by managers in a certain order. Management allows you to edit who manages an employee and if that manager receives request emails from that employee. Auto approve means that if this manager submits a request for this employee, that manager's request will be auto approved. If the policy you added to the employee contains an accrual, you can view and edit the accrual information for that particular employee under Balance Accrual. Remember, if you have changed the allowance for just this user and have an accrual on the policy, you will also need to update the accrue by manually to coincide with the changes. Banked time allows you to manually transfer approved bank time to a time-off type. Service accrual allows you to view which length of service is applied to this user and change it if need be. Calendar view allows you to add additional users to this person's calendar. Finally, options allows you to change the number of hours in a full day, change their calendar year, set the days in their work week, and allow this user to see the time-off types of others' requests. Finally, we will look at the Reports section, which is in the navigation menu at the left side of your screen. We have many reports available, so we will only go over 3 of the most commonly used reports: Time-off Summary, Time-off Totals, and Time-off Details. Time-off Summary is a report that everyone can see for themselves. Columns can be added to this report by going to Account Settings and Report, as we've seen previously. By default, users can see their allowance, balance, and pending time. All used time is shown in this summary at the right side. At the bottom of the report, they can see all of their approved, pending, rejected, and canceled requests. Next is the Time-off Totals report. This will show you the number of days your employees have taken off during a specified time period. You can select which users you want to run the report on, as well as which time-off types. Lastly is the Time-off Details report, which is similar to the Time-off Totals report. The difference is that instead of showing you a number, it will show you every request during the specified time period. Thanks for watching our tutorial of Time Off. If you have any questions, our customer success team is dedicated to ensuring you have a great experience with your PurelyHR account. Send us an email or give us a call and we'll be happy to assist you. Also, if you haven't already started a free 15-day trial, visit us at PurelyHR.com to get started.